The prison world was a place of fear, built in the cold shadows of a dead star. The air was heavy with smoke. The walls were made of black stone that seemed to drink light. The aliens who worked there always spoke in whispers, for in the deepest chamber lived the monster. It was not just a beast, it was a test. Criminals, rebels, and enemies were thrown into its den. None had ever walked out on that day. The guards dragged a human through the steel doors. His hands were chained, his face covered in dust. The aliens laughed. They had seen hundreds of prisoners beg and cry before being thrown into the pit. But this one was different. He did not speak. He did not struggle. He only walked, calm and silent. The young alien girl among the watchers felt her chest tighten. She had seen executions before, but something about this man was strange. Usually, when the doors opened, the sound of the monster's roar was enough to make prisoners collapse to their knees. But this man stood tall, his back straight, his eyes steady. The iron gate opened with a loud scream. The smell of blood and decay filled the air. Deep inside the darkness, glowing eyes appeared. The monster was awake. It was huge. Its body covered in scars, its claws long enough to rip through steel. Its roar shook the chamber, dust falling from the roof. Even the guards stepped back. But the human did not move. He stood as if the ground itself was steady beneath his feet. His breathing slow, his gaze fixed. The monster stepped out of the shadows, each step heavy, its growl echoing across the walls. The aliens above began to whisper, "Why is he not afraid? Why is he not screaming?" Every creature before had begged for mercy. Some had cried, some had fainted. But none had ever looked into the monster's eyes without breaking. The human silence was louder than any scream. The young alien girl could not look away. Her hands gripped the railing as if she were the one trapped inside. The monster bared its teeth, saliva dripping like fire. Its roar hit like thunder. Yet the man's face did not change. He did not flinch. He did not even blink. One of the guards spat. "He is frozen. He will die standing." But another shook his head slowly. "No. Look at him. He is waiting." The girl swallowed hard. She did not understand what she was seeing. It felt wrong. Like the universe itself had made a mistake. A fragile human should have been crushed by fear. Yet here he was, calm before death. It made the monster pause too. Its steps slowed, its massive body swaying, its yellow eyes narrowing in confusion. The silence grew heavy. The only sound was the monster's breathing, hot and sharp. The human raised his head a little, a tease reflecting the beast's glow. And in that moment, something shifted in the chamber. The aliens felt it. The girl felt it. Even the monster seemed to feel it. Fear had no place here. Minutes passed like hours. The crowd leaned forward, waiting for the man to break, waiting for him to run, but he did not. He only stood there, his shadow long against the firelight. The monster's claws scraped the floor, sparks flying. Still the human did not step back. The girl whispered under her breath, "Who is he?" No one answered her, because no one knew. All they knew was that the man's silence was more terrifying than the monster's roar. Then the monster lunged forward, its jaws wide, its muscles rippling like thunder. The aliens gasped. Some turned their heads away, sure it would be over. But even as the beast charged, the man's body remained calm, his eyes steady, his fists unclenched. At that instant, the world seemed to stop. The sound of claws striking stone echoed. Dust filled the air, yet when it cleared, the man was still standing, unbroken, unmoved. The guards exchanged uneasy glances. One muttered, "Not even the monster scares him." The words spread quickly, repeated again and again, until it became a chant in whispers for the first time. The legend of the human who would not flinch began to take shape, and in that dark prison, something greater than fear was born. The monster's roar shook the stone walls, echoing like thunder across the chamber. The guards leaned forward from their perches, their eyes wide, waiting for blood. Waiting for the human to finally scream, but the man only stood there, unmoved, his face calm like still water. The beast's muscles tensed, its claws dug into the cracked floor. Its massive body rippled as it crouched low. Preparing to strike, drool hissed as it touched the hot stone. The air smelled of iron and death. The aliens above grinned. They thought it was over. With a violent explosion of sound, the monster launched itself forward, its roar louder than any storm. Its claws slashing the air, the ground trembled under its weight. Dust filled the chamber like smoke. The alien girl clutched the railing, her heart racing. She whispered, "Run, just run." But the human did not move at the last possible second. When the monster's jaws were about to close around him, the man stepped sideways. It was not panic. It was not luck. It was precision. His body moved like a shadow slipping through cracks of light. The monster's teeth slammed shut on empty air. Its body crashed against the stone wall, sending shards flying. The crowd gasped in disbelief. No prisoner had ever lasted more than a heartbeat, but this human had dodged the first strike, and he had done it without fear. The beast roared in fury, spinning around, its claws scraping sparks across the floor. Its golden eyes locked on the man once more. The human turned slowly to face it, his breathing steady, his hands loose by his sides, as if he were facing nothing more dangerous than a gust of wind. The young alien girl's mouth was dry. She could not understand. Was this man trained? Was he born without fear? Or was it something even stranger? His silence spoke louder than words. It made her believe he was something more than flesh and bone. The monster attacked again, faster this time. Claws sweeping in wide arcs meant to slice him apart. The man ducked low, rolling across the floor. With fluid grace, the strike missed by a breath. The beast's claws tore deep grooves into the stone instead. The guards shouted, half in excitement, half in anger. Some cursed that the human still lived. Others shouted bets. The girl could not look away. Her heart begged for him to survive. She had never wanted anyone to live this badly before. The man rose to his feet as if nothing had touched him, dust clinging to his skin, his chains rattling softly. He lifted his head, his eyes steady. The monster snarled and rushed again. Yet, each time the man moved with perfect timing, sidestepping, ducking, rolling. Always just out of reach, never panicked, never afraid. Each miss made the beast more furious. Its roars shook the ceiling. Its body slammed into walls, cracking stone, spraying rubble across the chamber. Yet no matter how wild or powerful it became, the human's calm never broke. Minutes passed, though they felt like hours. The aliens watching grew restless. Some could not believe what they saw. He should be dead already. One hissed, another whispered. It's like he knows the monster's every move before it happens. The girl clung to the railing, her wide eyes fixed on the man. She had grown up in a world where humans were seen as weak, soft, fragile. But this one was rewriting everything she thought she knew. At last, the monster slowed, its chest heaving, its growls low. It circled the man, cautious now, its confidence shaken. The human stood tall, unshaken, his shadow stretching long under the firelight. For the first time in countless battles, the monster hesitated. And that silence was more shocking than any roar. The girl whispered under her breath, "It's afraid," her voice trembling. And though no one admitted it aloud, the aliens around her felt the same. The guards shouted angrily, trying to shake off their unease. But the truth had already sunk into their bones. This was no ordinary fight. This was the birth of something different, something dangerous. The monster roared one final time and lunged with all its weight, claws flashing, jaws wide enough to crush a man whole. The human's body moved like lightning, faster than before. He dropped low, chains rattling, his body spinning past the strike. His foot slammed against the stone, pushing him clear. The beast's attack missed once more, its body smashing into the far wall. The chamber shook from the impact. Dust fell in thick clouds, and when it cleared, the man was still standing. Calm, silent, unflinching. The whispers grew louder among the crowd. He cannot be broken, not even by the monster. One guard muttered, not even by death itself. Another said the young alien girl's heart pounded as she stared at the human. For the first time in her life, she believed in a legend that had not yet been written. The chamber was filled with whispers, the sound of voices rising and falling like waves against the black stone. Never before had anyone seen the monster hesitate. Never before had a prisoner lasted this long. The aliens who filled the high platforms leaned closer, their eyes wide, their hands gripping the railing. The guards shouted over one another, their bets now broken. One slammed his fist against the steel wall, cursing loudly. Another shook his head in disbelief. "This is wrong," he muttered. "The monster never plays with prey. It kills fast." Yet this human still stands. Their voices carried a mix of anger and fear. The younger aliens in the crowd, the ones forced to watch as punishment or lesson, were silent. They did not know whether to feel fear or awe. One boy whispered, "Is he even human?" While another answered, "If he is, then humans are not what we thought." The alien girl who had been watching since the beginning could not look away. Her chest felt tight. She had grown up believing humans were fragile. They were called weak by her elders, unworthy of respect. Yet this man had faced the beast and had not broken. His silence, his stillness, they frightened her more than the monster's roar. But deep inside, it gave her hope too. Her people had always lived in fear. Every punishment, every law, every scream reminded her that weakness was death. But when she looked at the man, she thought maybe strength was not loud. Maybe true strength was calm, quiet, and unshaken. The monster paced in the pit, its claws scraping sparks, its chest rising and falling with fury, but it no longer lunged blindly. It no longer believed the human was easy prey. It studied him now, careful, unsure. The crowd could see the change, and that made them uneasy. One old guard leaned forward, his eyes narrow. "He has faced death before," he said, his voice low. "This is not the first monster he has seen." Another spat back, "No, impossible. Nothing alive has ever faced this and lived." But the first guard did not argue further, because deep inside, he believed it. The girl turned her gaze to the other watchers. Some whispered in fear, others clenched their jaws, but none laughed anymore. The joy of cruelty was gone, replaced with the heavy weight of something new, something they could not name yet. The silence stretched, the man's steady breathing echoing louder than the beast's growls. Then, slowly, he turned his head toward the platforms, his eyes calm, cold, and steady. For a moment, it felt as though he looked at each one of them, not as a victim, not as prey, but as equals or worse, as if he was above them. The crowd shivered. One alien pulled back, muttering, his eyes. "It's like he sees us, like he already knows how we will fall." The words spread quickly, fear growing like fire through dry grass. The young girl felt something stir in her chest, a dangerous thought, a thought she had never dared to hold before. What if this man could win? What if humans were not weak? What if there was more power in them than anyone had believed? The monster roared suddenly, trying to break the moment, its voice shaking the chamber again, but the human's calm gaze remained. and the roar felt smaller, emptier. The crowd noticed it. Their ears rang, but their hearts still followed that. Man's silence. 2 guards argued near the front. One shouted, "We must end it now. Kill him before the others believe." But another answered, "No, if we interfere, the beast will turn on us. The law says the fight must finish." Their anger was not only about the human, it was about the change they felt creeping into the air. The girl whispered again, "He is teaching us something." Though she did not know what, she only knew she could not stop staring. She wanted to know how he could stand against fear when her whole life she had been taught to bow to it. The beast circled again, its growls low, its claws twitching. But still it did not strike. The crowd grew restless. Their whispers now louder than the monster itself. Some cheered for the beast to attack. Others stayed quiet, afraid of what would happen if it failed again. And in the middle of it all, the human stood alone, silent, his chains rattling softly whenever he shifted his weight. His shadow stretched across the stone, making him look taller than he was, and the girl thought, "This man is not just surviving, he is changing everything." For the first time in the history of the prison, the fear did not belong to the prisoner or the crowd. The fear belonged to the monster itself. And the aliens above knew it. The chamber was silent again. Heavy silence that pressed down on every watcher. The monster growled low, its eyes burning, yet it did not leap. It circled instead, slow and uncertain, as if it tried to solve a puzzle it had never faced before. The puzzle was the human. The man stood tall, his shoulders straight, his chains swaying with the soft rhythm of his breath, his face calm, his eyes sharp. The aliens watching felt as if he were carved from stone, unbreakable, unmoved, they whispered, among themselves, trying to explain what they saw. "He is not normal," one guard muttered, his voice uneasy. "No man can face the beast like this." Another shook his head. "Maybe he is trained. Maybe he has fought before." Their words fell into the silence like stones into water, but no answer came. The young alien girl leaned forward, her heart pounding. She had watched so many prisoners thrown into the pit, but never had she felt this. It was as if the man carried something hidden inside him, something the monster itself could sense. The beast roared and lunged again, claws flashing, jaws wide. But the human moved, not fast like panic, not wild like desperation. His movements were sharp, controlled, like he had done this many times before. He slid to the side, chains rattling, and the monster's strike missed by a breath. The ground cracked under its claws. Gasps filled the air. The crowd leaned closer. The girl's hands trembled. She whispered, "He knew. He knew where it would strike," her voice barely louder than a thought. The man rose from his crouch with ease, his body flowing like water. His eyes locked on the beast. There was no triumph in them, no fear, only a cold steadiness, the kind of look that belonged to a soldier, not a prisoner. The monster snarled, swinging its tail with violent force. The man bent low, letting it pass above his head. Sparks flew as it struck the wall instead. The sound echoed like thunder, but the man did not flinch. Not even then. The girl felt her chest tighten. She finally understood. This human had faced monsters before. Maybe not this one. Maybe not with claws and glowing eyes, but something worse. Something that had carved the fear out of him and left steel in its place. She thought of her own people, how they bent their heads under cruelty, how fear controlled their every step. And then she looked at the man and she thought, what kind of world made him like this? What kind of pain did he survive to stand like that? The crowd whispered louder now, stories being born in real time. One alien hissed, "He comes from a death world." Another muttered, "I heard humans fight wars even against each other." The words spread quickly. half in fear, half in awe. The monster attacked again, furious now. Each strike faster, heavier, but the human moved with perfect timing. Always just a step beyond its reach, his body reacting not with fear, but with memory, the way a soldier remembers a battlefield. The way a hunter remembers prey, his secret. Was showing, not through words, but through every step he took. He was no ordinary man. He had lived through battles that had already killed his fear long ago. The girl gripped the railing, her nails digging into the metal. She could not look away. She felt a strange heat in her chest. Not fear, not pity, but something else. Something. Like hope, the monster grew louder, its roars shaking the chamber. But the sound no longer carried power. Because the watchers had seen something greater than noise. They had seen calm, and calm was stronger. At last, the man straightened his back fully. His eyes locked on the beast. His chest rose and fell with slow, steady breaths. And for the first time he spoke. His voice was quiet. But it carried through the silence like fire through dry grass. "I have seen worse than you," he said, his words slow. Each one heavy, the crowd shivered, the girl's lips parted. She whispered the words to herself as if they were sacred. The beast froze. Its growl caught in its throat. Even it seemed to understand the weight of those words. The calm tone, the steady breath, the unshaken will. The guards exchanged uneasy looks. Their faces pale. One muttered, "What has he seen?" What? Could be worse than this? No one answered. But deep inside, they all wanted to know. And deep inside, they all feared the answer. The girl's eyes burned. She did not know if it was from fear or from something new. All she knew was that the secret of the human was not strength of body, but strength of spirit. Strength carved from suffering, from battles unknown. And as the monster circled again, the crowd no longer saw a prisoner. They saw something else, something dangerous. Something they could not control, the humans. Secret was simple, but terrifying. He had already faced death, and it no longer scared him. The monster's growls filled the chamber, deep and heavy. But there was something different now. It was not only anger, it was doubt. The crowd above felt it. Their whispers were sharp, uneasy. No one had ever seen the beast hesitate. No one had ever seen its spirit shaken. The human stood in the center, his body calm, his eyes steady, his chains hanging loose against his wrists. He looked at the creature as if it were nothing more than a storm passing across the sky. Dangerous, yes, but not unstoppable. The beast lunged again, faster this time, its claws tearing through the stone. The ground shook as it slammed down, but the man slipped aside with ease. His feet silent against the cracked floor, his movements sharp and measured. Like he knew where the beast would strike even before it moved. Gasps broke from the crowd. The young alien girl leaned forward, her eyes wide, her breath caught in her throat. She had never seen anything like this. He moves like he has fought this battle 100 times, she whispered, though no one around her answered. Because they all felt the same, the monster roared again. But its roar no longer shook the crowd. Instead, it sounded frustrated, uncertain. The human stood unflinching. And the creature's rage only grew. The beast swung its tail, heavy and fast. Enough to crush stone, but the man bent low, letting it pass above him. Dust fell from the ceiling as the tail struck the wall. Cracks spreading like veins across the black stone. Still, the human did not falter. The girl's heart raced. She pressed her hands against the railing. The truth was clear now. This fight was no longer about survival. It was about spirit, and for the first time, the monster's spirit was breaking. The human took a step forward, his chains rattling. The sound echoed louder than the beast's growl. He did not rush. He did not flail. He simply walked forward, calm and steady, and the creature paused, its eyes narrowing. The crowd erupted. In whispers, he makes the monster step back. One voice said, another hissed, impossible. No one can make it retreat, yet before their eyes. It happened. The beast shifted, its heavy body pulling back a single step. Unsure, the girl's lips parted in shock. She had seen hundreds fall to this monster. She had seen warriors beg for life. Yet now the beast itself looked like prey. The human's voice came again, quiet but powerful. Carrying across the chamber like thunder hidden in clouds, you are only a shadow of what I have faced, he said. The beast growled, shaking its head. But its movements lacked the same strength, its spirit cracking under the weight of the human's calm. Every time the monster attacked, the man dodged. Every time, it roared. He stood unshaken, the pattern repeated until the creature's strength turned into exhaustion. Its fury turned into confusion, and finally, its dominance turned into fear. The girl's heart pounded harder with every strike. She knew what she was witnessing was not just survival, it was a change. The kind of change that would spread beyond these walls, the kind of change that would turn into a legend. The guards began to argue loudly, their voices breaking the silence. One shouted, "It is bending. The beast is losing." Another cursed, "This cannot be allowed. He will make the others believe in him." But even their anger could not cover the truth. The beast charged again. But this time its roar cracked. It sounded less like power and more like desperation. It slammed its claws into the floor. The ground shook, but the man stood untouched, dust swirling around him. And then it happened. The beast froze, its chest heaving, its eyes wide, and slowly, it lowered its massive head. Not in attack, but in hesitation. Its spirit had been broken. The crowd fell silent. Every alien watching understood the weight of that moment, the monster that had crushed. Countless prisoners now stood uncertain, defeated not by blades, not by strength, but by the calm will of a human who did not flinch. The girl's hands shook against the railing, her throat tight. She whispered, "He has broken it." And her voice carried the truth the others were too afraid to say aloud. The human did not smile. He did not raise his fists in triumph. He only stood, calm, steady, unshaken. And that made the moment even more powerful. For the first time in the history of the prison, the monster had bowed. And the legend of the human who would not flinch grew stronger with every heartbeat. The chamber was silent. Only the sound of the monster's heavy breathing filled the air. Its chest rose and fell. Its glowing eyes narrowed, but it no longer moved forward. The great beast that had killed so many now stood still. Unsure, the human straightened his back, his chains clinking softly. The firelight reflected in his steady eyes. He did not rush, he did not stumble. He simply lifted his head and looked at the beast as if it were no more dangerous than a shadow. The crowd above leaned closer, their whispers sharp and fearful. "What is he doing?" One asked, "Why is the monster not striking?" Another muttered, but no one could answer. No one had ever seen this before. The young alien girl pressed her hands against the railing, her heart beating hard, her breath caught in her throat. She felt something heavy in the air, something that made the silence stretch like a rope ready to snap. Then the human spoke, his voice calm, deep, and steady. It was not loud, but it carried through the chamber, echoing off the walls. The words slid into every ear, burning themselves into memory. "I have seen war," he said, his tone heavy as stone. "I have seen worse than you." The words froze the crowd. They were simple, but they carried weight, weight that none of them could measure. Weight that the beast itself seemed to understand. The monster growled low, but it did not attack. It shifted instead, its massive body leaning back. The girl's lips parted. She whispered the words to herself, "Worse than you." She had never imagined anyone could say that to the beast. Never imagined anyone could look it in the eye and Speak as though it were small. The guards exchanged uneasy looks, their faces pale. One hissed, "What has he seen? What kind of war could carve such strength?" Another spat, "He lies, he only wants to frighten us." But even they did not believe their own words. Because they could hear the truth in his tone, the man's voice came again, calm, steady. "Unshaken fear is a chain, I broke it long ago." His words echoed like thunder rolling across mountains. Low but endless, the monster's claws scraped against the floor. Not in attack, but in hesitation. Its spirit was breaking further. Its roars had lost their power. Now, even its silence betrayed its fear. The girl gripped the railing tighter, her throat burning. She felt something inside her shift. Her people had always been taught to obey fear, to bow to power, to bend their backs before cruelty. But this man, this human, he spoke as though fear itself was beneath him. One young alien boy beside her whispered, "Is he a god?" But the girl shook. Her head, her voice trembling. "No. He is human," and that truth felt even more frightening. The crowd grew restless, their whispers rising into chaos. Some shouted that the man must be killed. Others stayed silent, too shaken to speak. For the first time, the chamber was not filled with cheers for death, it was filled with doubt. The man raised his head higher, his chains rattling softly, and he spoke again. "You think this monster is your terror?" he said, his eyes scanning the crowd now. "But you do not know terror until you have lived through mine." The words burned into them. His gaze was steady, cold, but not cruel. It was the gaze of someone who had walked through fire and learned to keep walking. The girl's breath shook. She felt tears prick her eyes, though she did not understand why. Maybe it was because she had never seen anyone stand against fear like this. Maybe because she had never seen hope born in a place meant only for death. The monster finally lowered its head, its growl dying in its throat. The beast that had crushed every prisoner before now looked smaller, weaker, broken not by violence, but by words. The guards roared in anger. One shouted, "Silence him." His voice poisons the crowd. But none moved, because they too were trapped. Trapped by the weight of his words, trapped by the fear that maybe, just maybe, he was telling the truth. The girl whispered again, almost to herself, "He has faced something worse than monsters, worse than death." And she knew that whatever world he came from, it had made him into something unbreakable. The human did not smile, he did not boast, he only stood still. His silence now heavier than his words, his presence alone breaking the spirit of beast and crowd alike. And in that silence, every alien knew the truth. This was not just a man, this was a legend being born before their eyes. The chamber was frozen in silence. The monster stood with its head lowered, its claws pressed into the cracked stone, its growls gone, its spirit broken. For the first time in memory, the beast had not killed. It had bowed. The human did not move. Fast, he did not raise his arms in victory. He only stood straight, his chains rattling softly as the firelight flickered across his face. He looked at the monster, not with triumph, but with calm, as if this was the ending he already expected. The aliens above leaned forward, their eyes wide, their voices trapped in their throats. Never before had they seen this. Never before had they felt fear for the monster instead of fear for the prisoner. The young alien girl clutched the railing, her breath shaky, her heart heavy in her chest. She whispered, "He has done it, he has broken it." Her words trembled as she said them. But they carried the truth. The guards were not laughing now, their faces pale, their jaws tight. One slammed his fist against the steel wall, shouting, "This cannot stand. The law says the fight ends in death." Another shook his head, his voice low, "But the beast refuses to kill him. It will not strike again." The monster turned its eyes away from the human. It stepped back, slow, heavy, almost like it was retreating into the shadows it came from. The ground shook under its weight, yet it did not roar. It did not lunge. It simply faded into the dark, beaten not by blade, not by fire, but by the spirit of a man who would not flinch. The silence that followed was louder than any roar. Every alien in the chamber felt the weight of it pressing into their bones. The human finally lifted his head toward the crowd, his eyes calm, his chest rising with slow breaths. And though he did not speak again, his silence was enough. It carried the message clearer than words. The young girl felt her throat tighten. Her people had been told all their lives that humans were fragile, weak, easy to break, but in that moment, she knew the truth. This human was stronger than any beast, stronger than fear itself. The whispers spread across the platforms, low at more. At first, then louder. Not even the monster scared him, one voice said. The human would not flinch. Another echoed. The words passed from mouth to mouth until they filled the chamber. The guards shouted, trying to silence them. But the words were stronger. The chant grew, rising above the fear, above the anger. The human would not flinch. They said again and again. The girl's hands trembled as she joined the whisper. Her voice shaking but certain, she repeated the words with the others, her eyes never leaving the man below. The human did not smile, he did not move, he only stood, his calm body casting a shadow long across the floor, and that shadow felt larger than any army, larger than any empire. One of the elder guards hissed under his breath. This is the beginning of something dangerous, but deep inside, even he knew it was too late. The legend had already been born. The monster had been feared for generations. A symbol of death, of hopelessness. Yet now it had been broken by one man, one human who refused to bend. That moment would not stay in the prison. It would spread. It would echo beyond the walls, beyond the planet, beyond the stars. The girl's eyes burned with tears she could not explain. She had never believed in hope, but now she did, and it was because of him. Because of the human who stood unshaken when even monsters bowed. The chains clinked softly as the man shifted. His weight, his face still calm, still steady. The firelight flickered across his eyes, and in them, the crowd saw not a prisoner, not prey, but a figure that would haunt their memories forever. The legend of the human who would not flinch had begun, and nothing in the galaxy could stop it now.